Tucson, Arizona, 1:52 in the morning. A security camera captures a man walking through the dark carrying two backpacks. One of them has reflective stripes. Hours earlier, a person wearing a similar backpack had been standing outside Nancy Guthrie's home. But here's what makes that footage disturbing. This wasn't Nancy's camera. Her camera had already been disabled. Whoever came to her house that night knew exactly where the doorbell camera was. They approached it in darkness, covered their face, and tampered with it deliberately. They planned for the camera they knew about. They didn't plan for the one 5 miles away, quietly recording them anyway. And that detail may explain this entire case. Because everything investigators have released points toward the same unsettling pattern. Someone spent time preparing for Nancy Guthrie, preparing for her neighborhood, preparing for her routines, preparing for the night she would be alone. But despite all that preparation, they still made mistakes. Mistakes that generated more than 30,000 tips. Mistakes that left behind DNA. Mistakes that may eventually lead investigators directly back to them. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, and since the early morning hours of February 1st, she has not been seen again. This is what we know before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. The Catalina foothills north of Tucson felt like the kind of place people escape to after surviving the harder parts of life. Quiet streets, large homes hidden behind desert brush, no streetlights, almost no movement after midnight. At night, the darkness there is complete. Residents protected intentionally. It's one of the few places where the sky still fills completely with stars. And for more than 50 years, Nancy Guthrie called that place home. She was born Nancy Ellen Long in Kentucky in 1942. Later, she and her husband Charles moved west to Arizona and built a life together in the desert. They raised 3 children in a single-story home surrounded by cactus, stone, and open sky. One of those children was Savannah Guthrie, who would eventually become co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. But long before national television, Nancy was simply a mother trying to hold her family together. In 1988, her husband Charles died unexpectedly during a mining trip in Mexico. He was only 49 years old. Savannah was 16. Nancy stayed in that house anyway. She raised her children there through grief, built routines there, built friendships there, attended St. Andrew's Church faithfully enough that people noticed immediately when she missed service. And according to Savannah, she and her sister Annie had an unspoken agreement for years. One of them would always stay close enough, so their mother would never truly be alone. That's what makes what happened next feel so haunting. Just 3 months before Nancy disappeared, Savannah brought a Today Show camera crew to Tucson. The segment showed parts of Nancy's life publicly, her city, her routines, even moments inside the community she had lived in for decades. Nancy laughed during the interview. She joked about javelinas eating the plants outside her home. She described Arizona as laid back and gentle. 3 months later, blood believed to belong to Nancy Guthrie was discovered outside that same house. The person who came to Nancy's home appeared to know things a stranger shouldn't know. The camera location, the darkness of the neighborhood, the timing, which raises an uncomfortable question investigators still haven't answered publicly. How long had someone been watching? Investigators believe Nancy returned home around 9:45 p.m. on January 31st after spending the evening with family. Dinner, card games, a completely ordinary night. Her son-in-law dropped her off at the front door. That was the last confirmed moment anyone who loved her saw her alive. For hours afterward, nothing appeared unusual. Then, at 1:47 a.m., the Nest doorbell camera outside Nancy's home suddenly went offline. Authorities later confirmed it wasn't a technical failure. Someone physically tampered with the device. Whoever approached that porch that night came prepared. But they missed something important. Even after the camera stopped functioning normally, back-end cloud systems continued collecting fragments of data. The intruder believed the footage was gone. It wasn't. At 2:12 a.m., the system registered movement near the property. 25 minutes after the camera had already been disabled, someone was still there. Then came the moment investigators now view as critical. At 2:28 a.m., The pacemaker monitoring application connected to Nancy's phone lost signal. That timestamp matters, because from that moment forward, one of three things had happened. Nancy's phone moved suddenly out of range. The phone stopped functioning, or Nancy herself stopped transmitting data entirely. Something happened at 2:28 in the morning, and investigators know it happened after the suspect had already spent more than 40 minutes around the property. 41 minutes. That's not normal burglary behavior. Experienced burglars move quickly. In and out, 5 minutes, maybe 10. But 41 minutes suggests something else entirely. Comfort, familiarity, confidence. Confidence that nobody was coming. And when Sheriff Chris Nanos reviewed the timeline, he made a decision that immediately changed the direction of the investigation. He called homicide detectives, not search and rescue, not standard missing persons investigators. Homicide. Later, when reporters asked why, Nanos answered carefully, "There is something that is not right here." Nancy's phone was still inside the house. Her wallet was still there too. So was the medication she reportedly depended on daily to remain medically stable. Whoever spent 41 minutes inside that home walked past those bottles and left them behind. If this was really a ransom kidnapping, that decision makes very little sense. As the investigation expanded, drones scanned the Sonoran Desert while search dogs worked through rocky terrain surrounding Tucson. The Border Patrol joined the search. Volunteers arrived. Within days, the FBI was fully involved. But by then, the person responsible already had a massive head start. And for more than a week, the public had almost nothing to work with. No suspect photos, no vehicle description, no clear explanation of what investigators believed had happened inside Nancy's home. Then the case changed again. On February 10th, the FBI released recovered images from the damaged doorbell camera system. The photograph showed a masked figure standing on Nancy Guthrie's porch in darkness. Gloves, dark clothing, a backpack, a handgun holstered low across the body. The person appears calm, deliberate, not rushed. Investigators later identified the backpack as an Ozark Trail hiking pack sold through Walmart. And suddenly, one ordinary object became one of the most important clues in the case. Because while the suspect appeared organized enough to study camera placement and neighborhood patterns, other details suggested someone far less sophisticated. Former investigators publicly described the suspect's weapon positioning and movement as awkward, almost amateur. That contradiction became important, because the evidence now pointed towards someone who may have planned extensively, without actually knowing what they were doing once the crime began. And then came the ransom messages. Multiple communications demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin for Nancy's return. One note reportedly included details about the scene that had never been released publicly, suggesting whoever wrote it may have known what happened inside the home. But investigators quickly noticed another problem. The ransom logic itself didn't fully make sense. Because if the goal was money, Nancy needed to stay alive long enough to negotiate. Yet the medication she reportedly relied on daily remained sitting untouched inside the house. 5 seconds. That's all it would have taken to grab it. And somehow, after spending 41 minutes there, the suspect still walked away without it. The suspect planned for darkness, planned for cameras, planned for timing, but not for the second camera 5 miles away, and not for the cloud system still quietly collecting evidence after the camera had already been disabled. The deeper investigators looked into this case, the more the mistakes started appearing. When investigators laid all the evidence side by side, a disturbing picture began to emerge. This did not appear random. The suspect may have known Nancy's routines, possibly studied the property beforehand, possibly understood when family members would and would not be nearby. They arrived masked and armed. They disabled surveillance. They remained at the home for an unusually long period of time. Then, within 24 hours, ransom demands began appearing publicly. And yet, despite all of that preparation, the execution kept breaking apart under scrutiny. Cheap equipment, awkward weapon handling, missed evidence, a second unseen camera. Cloud data is still recovering images, Even the language used in the ransom messages reportedly raised questions for investigators reviewing them. The case began to look less like the work of professionals and more like someone trying very hard to appear sophisticated. And underneath all of this sits another uncomfortable reality. Nancy Guthrie was not protected by security teams or federal monitoring systems. She was an elderly woman living quietly in the same home she had lived in for decades. But because her daughter was famous, parts of Nancy's life had also become public. Her city, her routines, her neighborhood. Investigators have never publicly connected media exposure directly to crime, but the timing is difficult to ignore. 3 months after appearing in a nationally broadcast segment, Nancy Guthrie disappeared. And somewhere inside more than 30,000 tips, investigators believe the truth may already exist. As of today, Nancy Guthrie has not been found. No suspect has been publicly identified. No arrest has been announced. And investigators continue working through thousands of leads. But several facts remain impossible to ignore. A masked figure appeared outside her home. The doorbell camera was deliberately disabled. Additional evidence was still recovered anyway. Ransom demands followed almost immediately. And someone spent 41 minutes at the property before Nancy vanished. Meanwhile, Savannah Guthrie continues publicly asking for answers about her mother, not as a television anchor, as a daughter. Because beneath all the forensic analysis, timelines, surveillance footage, and FBI investigations, this story is still about a family waiting for someone they love to come home. And for more than 50 years, Nancy Guthrie always did, until one night, she didn't. If you have any information related to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, authorities are still actively accepting tips through the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Investigators believe the smallest overlooked detail could still matter. A backpack, a receipt, a vehicle seen late at night, a conversation someone didn't think was important at the time, because the person responsible planned carefully for what they expected investigators to see. But cases like this are often solved by the things criminals never expected to leave behind. And somewhere inside those missing 41 minutes, the answer may already exist.